How's it going, guys? Football-ManagerYouthDevelopment.co.uk here. In this episode, we're going to be continuing to take a look at how you can reduce the number of injuries you are getting on Football Manager. In the last episode, we took a look at how the training that you put your players on could make your players get more injuries. In this video, we're going to take a look at how the tactics and team selections that you set for your players could also be increasing the number of injuries that they're getting. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at 5 different areas that could be affecting the amount of injuries that your players are picking up. So the first area that we're going to be taking a look at is the tempo that you set for your team. If, like me, you do like your teams to sort of chase down the opposition and play at a fairly high pace, this is a good thing to be doing. Obviously, a lot of managers like Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp do this in real life. Their players are kind of running around all over the place, you know, really trying and working hard to close down the opposition. They move the ball around quick and they want to close the opposition down quick. If you think about this though, if your players are running around, having to run around at like 100 miles an hour throughout the whole of the 90 minutes, then this can increase the number of injuries that they're going to be getting. What could be quite a good idea, guys, so if you're playing a game and you're comfortably winning a game, say 2 or 3-0, and you've maybe got about 20 minutes to go, if your team's at a higher tempo, what you might want to consider doing is just lowering the tempo down, maybe putting it to normal or at a slightly lower tempo, just so that your players can have a slightly bit more of a rest, and that should decrease the amount of injuries that they could get through having to play a higher tempo throughout a whole game. The second area that we're going to be taking a look at is player condition. So just as a general rule of thumb, I don't really like to start players in a starting 11 if their condition is under about 89%. I do generally think that if you've got a very, very important player for your team and you're going to be playing in an important game, then you might risk a player if his condition is not over about 89%. But generally, if you've got some players, for example, fullbacks or box-to-box midfielders that are going to be running around a lot, if you see that their condition or player condition is dropping quite rapidly, then you might want to consider, especially maybe for fullbacks, making sure that they're not having to run up and down the wing for the whole game. Or you might want to maybe tell them to ease off their tempo just very slightly so they're not completely knackered. If you think about it, if you've got a fullback running up and down the wing for a whole 90 minutes, if you're asking him to do that for every single game, you will see his condition drop fairly rapidly throughout, you know, a number of games. So it's very important that you do make sure that you're always taking a look at a player condition. Obviously, the more knackered a player is, then there's going to be an increased risk of him picking up more injuries. The third area to have a think about is how hard you're making your players tackle. I do like my players to press down the opposition, and of course a good way to win the ball back quickly is to really get in the face of the opposition. There's a couple of things that you can do, so when you actually go to your players, you can set them to tackle harder. You may want to just pick and choose what type of player you get to tackle harder. For example, if in your team you've got a really good, strong, hard tackling midfielder who's got strength for 20, really good at tackling, then this is going to be a prime candidate who you might want to go into tackles a little bit harder. If, on the other hand, you had maybe a winger, someone like Pedro, for example, for Chelsea, who's very small, not exactly very strong, if you're telling a player like Pedro to go into a tackle really hard, he's got an increased chance of becoming injured through going into harder tackles. So if you are making your players go into harder tackles, have a look at your player attributes and the type of player that you're asking to go into a harder tackle, and make sure that you're only getting stronger players or players who are a little bit more robust to go into them harder tackles. The fourth area that we're going to be taking a look at is the get stuck in tackling role on the tactics screen. So you will see at the bottom of the screen at the moment, you can have the option to tell your players to get stuck in. This, of course, can be quite a good thing, and obviously if you're playing maybe a sort of style where you want to be pressing the opposition and getting really stuck into the opposition, then this can be a good thing. If you are telling your players to get stuck in though, what can happen is that your discipline could completely go out the window. You're going to be picking up maybe a lot of yellow cards and potentially red cards. This, of course, is not a very good thing. You will be winning the ball back a lot quicker, and if you're a team who likes to maybe play on a counter-attack or something like this, then this can be a good thing to use, telling your players to get stuck in. Again, just like the last thing, in terms of tackling harder, if you do have players that are not potentially suited to hard tackling, then you really do need to have a think about if you do want your players to get stuck in to try and win the ball. The fifth and final area that we're going to be taking a look at to reduce the number of injuries that your players pick up on Football Manager is their match sharpness. So with a lower match fitness, there is more chance of a player picking up an injury. During pre-season, for example, you might want to go to easier tackling, put your team on a lower tempo and give your players more rest. This will help with reducing the chance of them picking up more injuries. If you have players who are coming back from an injury, especially a longer term injury, then it could be a good idea to give them quite a lot of reserve football, maybe for 20 to 45 minutes at a time, so they can try and increase their match fitness. It could also be a good idea to bring the player on as a sub during your first team games. It can also be a good idea to try and put your players on a fitness training program to try and increase their match fitness in between matches. I'm going to call this the end of this particular episode, guys, but as a general rule of thumb, you really do need to be thinking about the condition of your players, what you're actually asking them to do on the pitch. For example, obviously harder tackling, making their tempo really high. These are the type of things that are going to increase the number of injuries that your players are picking up. So if you're just thinking about the condition of your player and the type of things that you're making them do on the pitch, then this should decrease the number of injuries that your team is picking up. I hope you have found this video interesting. If you have, please do remember to drop a like on the video and of course subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Thanks for watching.